Welcome to WYCD Wicked. That stands for What You Can Do. It's your old pal Jake, and man, it's Salty Saturday. That means we don't have to be all that mature. We get to just have fun, blow off some steam, and let's get it started proper. Hey, guess what? If you happen to see people posting political signs on public property, there's something you can do about it. Let me show you. Yeah, if you see fashy nonsense like this here, America First nonsense, that little sticker you see right there, you know, this silliness. If you see that, do this. It's public property. You don't need to put up with fashy nonsense. By the way, I highly recommend the Reddit community bash the fash, because that is the correct thing to do to fascists. That's all for that segment. How's everybody doing today? Delighted to see you. Delighted to be here on Wicked on a Saturday. Whoa, wait a minute. Probably going to be helpful if I take that off. There we go. Anti-corporatist, good to see you. Jesse Jennings, hello again. Wicked Foxy Dragon, delighted to have you on, even if it's only listening. Jess Rush, hello. Everybody, Wireless Mike, delighted. Should America be last? Am I right? Says Jesse Jennings. No, it's the horrible political party that's associated with. That's the problem. They're criminals. I'm not sure if you're aware, but the Republican Party in the United States they're a criminal organization. Some quick background. They had to sign a consent decree with a C, not a G, saying that they wouldn't post poll watchers. Why? Because they were posting thugs to try to intimidate voters. These are the same folks that gerrymander to have their party survive, sell favors when they get power. They're not good people, and you shouldn't support them. Hey, speaking of, gang, that's what today's stream is all about. How it can be fun to debate. It should be energizing. Thing number one, if you're not feeling it, don't do it. If you feel that somebody's bothering you and just ruining your time, don't engage with them at all. And particularly in this channel, if somebody else is already engaged with them, let that person do it. That's it. But for the most part, and particularly on Salty Saturday, don't engage. Not at all. Just let it hang there. All right. Speak of the devil. Let's get started proper. Let's talk about something I'm pretty darn salty about, and that is hypocrisy. Let's get to it. So on this show, we have we do a different theme most days. The idea is eventually every day of the week will be its own special thing. Right now, on Friday, we do peace talks, where we try to reach across the aisle and we ask people to send in clips that represent their arguments well, and then we talk about them. Salty Saturday is not that. Salty Saturday is where we let ourselves be free to be salty. We complain because it's healthy. The thing that I want to complain most about was presented by Chris Hayes, actually, a couple days ago. And it is hypocrisy from politicians. Let's look at it.
So the argument from the Federalist Society, the anti-abortion right, at least some of them, for overturning Roe v. Wade was and has been that Roe wrongly took the issue of abortion rights away from the people, and that the Dobbs decision that overturned Roe then returned the democratic process to its rightful place and to the people in the states. Justice Brett Kavanaugh, in his concurring opinion, stated that argument quite simply. He wrote, the Dobbs decision, quote, properly leaves the question of abortion for the people in the democratic process. Through that democratic process, the people and their representatives may decide to allow or limit abortion. Now, as poll after poll has shown, the people aren't that interested in bans on abortion, the kinds that have come in the wake of the Dobbs decision. Abortion bans are really incredibly unpopular. And so Republicans and conservatives have been using all sorts of increasingly anti-democratic subterfuge to have their way on banning abortion over the objections of the majority of their own voters. Take North Carolina, for example, right? Republicans in the state legislature recently gained a supermajority when this woman, Tricia Cotham, a Democrat who ran on abortion rights and co-sponsored a bill to codify Roe in the state's constitution, inexplicably switched parties. And she gave them a supermajority, and then conservatives and Republicans then used their new veto-proof supermajority to pass an abortion ban in North Carolina. Over the objections of the electorate, it polled pretty poorly, and over the veto of the governor, who's a Democrat and was democratically elected statewide.
Hold up just a second. How much does this remind you
To pass an abortion ban in
of
North
the
Carolina.
50s? Right? Like the 1950s and 60s in the United States. People just trying to have basic rights that are recognized everywhere else in the world. I should say, rather, all around the world. Not everywhere, but all around the world. Human rights. A person wanting the right to control what happens in their own body, for God's sake. The cops are out there dragging them away like they're doing something wrong. Just fundamentally, that should bother you, no matter who you are. Just fundamentally. Okay. Well, let's see. Let's see how fair they are about this. They believe somebody should not have the right to control their own body. There are circumstances where you are, apparently, according to the GOP, you are allowed to dictate what somebody else can do with their body. Are they at least going to play fair and let the people vote for it?
Over the objections of the electorate, it polled pretty
Nope.
poorly. And over the veto of the governor, who's a Democrat and was democratically elected statewide. So
Double
that's North
nope.
Carolina. Now, here's what's happening in Ohio right now. That state's 6-week abortion ban is currently tied up in court. Its 22-week ban is still in effect. There's a coalition of organizations that are currently collecting hundreds of thousands of signatures to put the question of a constitutional amendment to enshrine reproductive rights in the state's constitution on the ballot in November. The people, right, voting. Or, in Justice Kavanaugh's words, to leave the question of abortion for the people in the democratic process. Similar efforts to support abortion rights have been very successful, even in states that are pretty conservative, like Kentucky. And Ohio Republicans and anti-abortion activists know this. So what they're trying to do is take the decision out of the hands of the majority of Ohio voters. They introduced their own constitutional amendment that would raise the ballot initiative threshold that has been in place for, get this, over 100 years, from a simple majority of 50% plus one to 60%. And Republicans are now trying to do this and get it done before that pro-abortion rights constitutional amendment can get on November's ballot.
All right. Couple unique rules for tonight, for the sake of making this fun for me and for you. and also for the sake of making this healthy, good training for all involved. I'd like Jesse to pay attention to this in particular. So nobody debate Jesse. I know we normally do the rule where we say one at a time. And that's fine, but it requires a bit of moderation. We don't have our normal moderator here, Wicked Foxy Dragon, doing well, she's here, but she's not moderating. And I'd like us to deal with the principle that's being talked about here. What is Chris Hayes talking about? In 2 states that he's laying out, Republicans are saying that government should function a certain way until they get what they want, and then they say it should function a different way so that nobody can change what they've done. In other words, it's hypocrisy. Now, I want everyone to deal with this openly. If you support this hypocrisy, you're going to have to explain why. And you should know that your opinion is unlikely to be taken seriously in any other political matter. You're like a soccer player, if you support this, that flops over anytime someone from the other team runs past you. We don't believe you're really injured. Let's watch. I'm not doing this whole thing, just this.
And get it done before that pro-abortion rights constitutional amendment can get on November's ballot. Meaning...
Oh, by the way, Jesse, that goes for you too. Don't debate anybody. Watch this. You can comment on it, by all means. But don't engage in a debate. I'll ask questions directly. Don't worry.
They want to put their own anti-democratic proposal up for a vote during a special election in August. Even though Republicans in Ohio themselves recently passed a law outlawing the majority of August special elections, not to mention a bipartisan group of Ohio election officials formally voted to oppose the Republican bill because they don't want to run a statewide election in August.
Come on. Come on. They said, no, we're not doing elections in August anymore. Wait, there's something we want to get a vote passed on. It's got to be August. We're going to do it in August. Votes only require 50% of the electorate. We got to change that because 60% support abortion. We're going to up it to 60%. Why would we take anything a Republican has to say seriously ever again? They are not honest actors. And if you support them, you should know, we're going to tell you right now, in fact, you are now informed that you have been supporting dishonest actors. So if you continue to support them, you are a dishonest actor. Them's the facts.
The Republicans' play here is being challenged in court. But it's clear what's going on here, right? A maneuver designed explicitly to motivate hardcore anti-abortion proponents to come out in the dead of summer in a low turnout election so then they can move the goalposts and make it nearly impossible for a simple majority of Ohioans to decide to secure abortion rights in their state. No one has been chronicling this movement of anti-democratic, anti-majoritarian politics in states more than David Pepper. He's the author of Laboratories of Autocracy, a wake-up call from behind the lines, and the new book, Saving Democracy, a user's manual for every American. He's also the former chair of the Ohio Democratic Party, and he joins me now. Good to have you here.
Great to be with you, although it makes my blood boil to hear that summary.
It is really, it's almost, I mean, it's not comical because the stakes are high, but it's so, the sort of manifest pretext behind the whole thing always just strikes me.
It's outrageous. I mean, the whole sequence. And keep in mind, this legislature itself is the result of multiple violations of Supreme Court orders that this map is itself gerrymandered. So their legitimacy is already in question. Right. This is an...
I have to say, manifest pretext? We got to work on our language. We have to take our thesauruses on the left, and we should burn them. What the hell does that even mean? I get the vague sense that I understand, but I couldn't literally tell you what manifest pretext means. But yes, it's a lie. It's hypocrisy. It is a bunch of people being dishonest in government. That is it put in English.
Unconstitutional map that led to these guys in the first place. So we're piling lawlessness on top of lawlessness over and over again, and this is what you get when that happens.
Right, because it's one of these states. It's not quite as bad as Wisconsin, North Carolina, but it's in the ballpark where you've got a state that's it's a pretty Republican state at this point. It's a +7 state, +8 in presidential elections, but you've got enormous majorities, right, in both houses because they set those gerrymanders.
They would not have had the votes to approve this measure a couple weeks ago without the illegal gerrymander that they're living within. So that's just one other level of lawlessness.
So they've got the gerrymander, and they use that supermajority to put this on the ballot. They're now going to...
All right, let's see if y'all were able to stick with it. Ooh, Anti-Corporatist says, I love that saying. Oh, God. Andrew Woznicki, it's hard to take you serious, Jesse. You spout MAGA talking points, then claim you're not MAGA and claim it's both sides. All right. Andrew, I appreciate that you're trying to reach out, but don't. It's difficult, but this is training. Oh. Am I muted? Not anymore. No longer muted. But yes, and Andrew, thank you for the heads up. But no, this is training, and it's as much training in ignoring as it is in engaging. So don't engage right now. Jesse, is he claiming only Republicans gerrymander? No, and that's a great question. He's certainly not presenting the fact that Democrats gerrymander as well, and that's a fact. In fact, Democrats do engage. I know. Andrew Woznicki, I'm sorry. I'm on a slight delay with the stream processing, but I do appreciate the heads up because one day I will fail to catch it. By one day, I mean almost every day. So in answer to Jesse's question, because I want to use this as training for all of us, myself, Jesse, Andrew, the anti-corporatist, Lulu girl, all of us. Just guns down conversations. In answer to that question, is he saying that only Republicans gerrymander? The answer is no, but it's understandable that you could be left with the impression that that's what he's saying. And let me just clarify, by no means do only Republicans gerrymander, but he's talking about what Republicans are doing with heavily gerrymandered states. Look at what they're doing. Deal with this. I'm comfortable. In fact, I'm delighted to rag on Democrats when they act unethically. And by the way, they act unethically. I have a deep loathing for a lady by the name of Nancy Pelosi and a fellow by the name of Chuck Schumer because they are insanely unethical. Kristen Sinema, when she was a Democrat, insanely unethical, voted against the minimum wage despite what she told her constituents. Joe Manchin, the worst trash we have in the Democratic Party. Guy owns coal mines, I believe. And he constantly votes in favor of his own businesses. But this country is not going to get better unless people who generally support either party begin to hold their own party to account. And certainly don't side with them when the other side is trying to hold them to account. Don't show support for villains. Now look, We could go on and on about how much Democrats suck. In fact, Lord knows I'm susceptible to it. But we're not talking about Democrats right now. We're talking about specifically the issue of abortion, wherein Republicans are going against the will of the people. And this is some sci-fi dystopian stuff, my friend. Forget for a moment whether or not you are a man or a woman. Just, it's irrelevant. Set it aside. We're all human beings, yes? Good. Can you force someone to give birth? Is that okay to force someone to give birth? Some people, in these cases, in the case of RAPE, some of them were forced to get pregnant, but that's not the government's fault. The government comes in when they say whether or not, apparently, it's going to be mandatory that you give birth. Now, if that seems like the sort of thing the people should decide, I agree. And the chief complaint that Chris Hayes is pointing out here, and I agree with it, is that Republicans, which I call a criminal party for reasons like this, Republicans are insisting that people give birth, and they are taking the decision as much as they can out of the hands of the people. They are using gerrymandering, despicable tactics. They are changing the rules on how you vote. They're changing when you can vote. They're going against their own rules that they put in place, making it crystal clear that they will not hear the will of the people. And you should have a problem with that. I don't care what the Democrats did. You want me to say the Democrats are bad? Done. We have no argument there. Never have. In fact, I'll double down. I don't like Democrats. Find myself voting with them all the time because we have a two-party system. But this is not a discussion about who we should vote for now. It's a discussion about how we will allow the people who we have already voted for to behave. And if you voted for these folks, you have an obligation to keep them in line. These are your employees. You decided they should be there. You have a responsibility for them. That means you should be writing them and saying, what the hell are you doing? I didn't vote for a king. I voted for a representative. Represent.
They're going to put this on the ballot.
Sorry, I got a little bass.
Are they honest about why they're doing this? Like when they give the argument for why suddenly it has to be a 60% threshold.
No, it's a joke.
Well
I mean,
done,
they're
Cameron.
saying they need to protect the Constitution. For the first time in 100 years, they have to protect the Constitution months before what you just described, a citizen-led ballot initiative to actually have the people vote on abortion access. By the way, when the Supreme Court came out with that opinion, it was gaslighting from the very beginning.
Sure, yeah.
They know that most of these states are gerrymandered. They do not reflect the people. Kansas showed that with its referendum last August. And these legislators know it. That's why every poll in Ohio shows that about close to 60%, and that's why that's such an important number, close to 60% of Ohioans support Roe v. Wade in general abortion access. Almost none support abortion bans, no exceptions, that sent that 10-year-old girl to Indiana who was raped. These guys know that, and as you've described, it's so blatant. They're moving the goalpost. But let's be clear. Now, I hope this comes out this way. I'm not sure it will. They themselves made a special election in August illegal.
Right. So
and they did not revoke that law.
Okay. So this is another great layer on top of this. So basically, they're on this race, right? They see the abortion rights advocates are going to get this ballot initiative in November.
Right.
So they're like, well, we want to raise the threshold to change the rules of the game before they can get there in November. So we have to have our election here in August.
Correct.
The dead of August, right? Now, the county election officials, a lot of them were Republican, are like, what the hell are you doing? We don't want this, right? But they have already passed a law saying you can't have special elections in August?
Yeah, and they tried to get the votes to repeal that law, but they didn't have the votes, so they just stopped trying to repeal it, and they're just saying we should have it anyway. By the way, the Secretary of State announced to those elections officials months ago the great victory of getting rid of these August elections. It was a bipartisan victory. The author of the August election idea himself said this was a career-long goal of mine to get rid of August elections. Months later, they can't repeal it, but they still demand an election on a date where it's currently illegal to have a statewide special election in Ohio.
So this is where we get back to these sort of layers of anti-democratic. So that challenge to the legality of this August 8th election is going to go to a state.
It's the Ohio Supreme Court.
And how are we doing over in the Ohio State Supreme Court?
Unfortunately, we had our Wisconsin moment a couple of years ago. We actually got ourselves an independent court. Then they changed those rules and added party label to the ballot, moved those races up to the top, and now they have themselves.
Oh, I forgot about that. Right.
There's another one.
The court changed hands.
It did. We had a moderate Chief Justice who was a longtime Republican who, with 3 Democrats, voted against every gerrymandered map. But in the meantime, they switched the rules of how we elect justices, like they did in North Carolina, and then violated for a year all the court orders. As I always say, if we saw this in another country, we would be saying, my God, you have no rule of law. Well, that's Ohio right now in 2023.
And it's...
And on and on and on. That is the main problem that I have with the Republican Party. The absolute phobia of a fair fight. To go further, talking about not representing the will of the people. To go further, Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, that's a Democrat. Just to demonstrate for you that this is a matter of principle over politics. It affects politics, certainly, but it's a matter of principle. Governor Tim Walz vetoed a rideshare bill that would have raised he did this yesterday, I believe. It would have raised the wage of Lyft and Uber drivers. I'm not talking about whether or not you think that was a good bill. It's what the people said they wanted. Now, if Tim Walz would have vetoed that because he saw something that was an immediate harm that was not that was not addressed, that would be one thing. But let me tell you what Tim Walz did. It was Uber threatening to halt operations outside of the Twin Cities. We knew that was a tactic they would use. The people knew. But Tim Walz, let's never forget, particularly if you're on the left, never forget this. Tim Walz said the opinion of a corporation is more important to him than its workers. Now let's go back to these Republicans, gerrymandering, changing the rules when they don't get the outcomes they want. How much longer, honest question for all here, how much longer do you think people are going to stay in their homes politely, waiting for a democratic society? Sort of the American reputation that we don't brook that kind of nonsense for all that long. We can do this a number of ways. The way I recommend, and what I'm spending all of my time dedicated to at the moment, is telling you, whoever you are, wherever you stand politically, to take control of your elected officials. If you live in Minnesota, you got to be talking to Tim Walz. If you live in North Carolina, you got to be talking to your representatives. If you live in Ohio, you got to be talking to your representatives. And you have to insist that they fulfill the will of the people, even if you don't like the will of the people. Because otherwise, we go back to King George. I don't want that. Neither should you. Jesse Jennings, are you talking about 15-minute cities? No, I'm talking about the rideshare bill that would have guaranteed drivers at least a couple of bucks per mile spent driving around for Uber and Lyft. Democrats, surprise, surprise, Democrats passed a bill with a great deal of support, surprising amount of support, that would have guaranteed a certain amount of pay per work done, because there was a lot of Uber and Lyft drivers who were just losing their shirts working. That's not how America's supposed to work. If you put in an honest day's work, you're supposed to get an honest day's pay. Would have been fine. Would have been passed. It was a done deal, except the governor then in Minnesota turned around and just dropped the ball. He vetoed it because he bowed to pressure from a corporation. No real info on how many show yet, says Wireless Mike. Active situation. Uh-oh. Wireless Mike, there is a shootout going on, a rolling shootout, good lord, between banditos, a motorcycle club, and someone else at approximately 5:45 p.m. I'm assuming that is Pacific. Good lord. All right, let's cover some breaking news. It's been a while. Banditos shootout. Breaking. Wow. Well, I see a hell of a lot of stuff from last month. Apparently, the Banditos have been in quite a scrap, but I'll stay tuned. Surreal Edifice says, ever see the movie network? That speech Ned Beatty gives in the boardroom about the nature of who they are is as true today as it was in the 70s. Interesting. I'll look at that. And we got Lulu Girl saying, F it, we'll do it live. Yeah. Unfortunately, I don't see that information, but I will keep an eye out for it. Hey, let's talk about some more. Oh, you know what? Actually, let's talk about Texas very quickly. That's not a great intro, huh? Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton was impeached today, and I want to briefly discuss that with you because it sticks with the theme of corruption. Well, today we got the vote we were waiting for. If you've been following Texas, Attorney General Ken Paxton has been impeached in a bipartisan vote. If you were unfamiliar with the situation up until now, it's probably not a surprise. The party in power there did a heck of a lot to be quiet about it, but this vote had to come eventually. Here's the basics. He had a major donor getting some legal hot water, and apparently he chose not to act and was informed by his own staff that what he was doing was bribery. Was corrupt. Didn't listen to him, and now the end result of that investigation has resulted in an impeachment. This is an article by NPR. In a historic vote Saturday. Oh, now I'm paranoid. All right, we got it up. In a historic vote Saturday, The Texas House of Representatives decided to impeach Republican State Attorney General Ken Paxton over allegations of illegal activities related to one of his political donors. Paxton will immediately and temporarily, bear that in mind, be suspended from his duties pending a trial in the state Senate. Representative David Spiller, a Republican who serves on the House General Investigating Committee, told members that even though he thinks Paxton has a brilliant legal mind, he still violated the law. He put the interests of himself above the state of Texas, yada yada. He put the interest of himself over his staff, who tried to advise him on the multiple occasions that he was about to violate the law. Now pay attention to how similar Paxton's defense of himself sounds. Ask yourself, before I read this, is he going to try to scare people with irrelevant discussion? Is he going to do whataboutism? Gets uncomfortable talking about his situation, so what about those people? Is he going to impugn the reputations? Is he going to do of those investigating him rather than talk about what their investigation uncovered? Is he going to do everything in his power not to discuss the matter at hand? That is what you should ask yourself before I read these statements from it. In a statement on Twitter after the vote, Paxton wrote, "The ugly spectacle in the Texas House today confirmed the outrageous impeachment plot against me." A plot. It's a plot. It's not an investigation. It's not legitimate. Why? Why would somebody be plotting against him? Interesting. Against me was never meant to be fair or just. It was a politically motivated sham from the beginning. Okay, why is it politically motivated? Let's see some evidence of that, not just a wild accusation. The resolution to impeach now goes to the Texas Senate, which will be tasked with setting up a trial and deciding whether to convict the Attorney General. In other words, House served it up. It's temporarily in effect, and the Senate can overturn it or affirm it. Paxton joins a small list of Texas public officials who have been impeached. The last was 1976, so I guess it's not all that important. He has denied any allegations of wrongdoing, calling the proceedings a sham and illegal. We already went over that. You're repeating yourself, NPR. Come on. He also continued to claim the impeachment vote prevents him from protecting Texans. So there's a threat to your safety that he tosses in there from the federal government. Ooh, the scary federal government's coming for you. And I can't protect you if they take me away. That's why you need to let me do crimes. Be a real shame if something happened to this storefront. That's why you got to pay me. Otherwise, something bad could happen. Their plot, again, he calls it a plot, imperils, I think they meant to say, critical litigation my office has brought against the Biden administration to end the federal government's attacks on our constitutional rights and the rule of law. What is he talking about? He's trying to scare his constituents about something he says the other side will do. Doesn't go into specifics. What does that sound like to you? Have you heard this song and dance before? One guy gets accused of being corrupt. And the response he's also training his supporters to go to, is to start ranting and raving about irrelevant things. He says, you have to accept me the way I am, crimes and all, because I'm doing something that is very important. And that important thing, it means that I'm immune from all this other nonsense that you peasants are subject to. These rules. Paxton has also claimed he was never given the opportunity to testify in front of the House General Investigating Committee. But Representative Ann Johnson, a Democrat who sits on the investigating committee, said Paxton had already told his story on a document posted on his website in response to the complaints by the whistleblower. It was not a party line vote. Both Republicans and Democrats spoke for and against, interesting, Paxton's impeachment. I don't know why any Democrats would speak against it, but okay. Well, I take that back. Bribes. Republican State Representative Charlie Green, a member of the House General Investigating Committee, said that several House lawmakers received telephone calls from Paxton personally threatening them with political consequences in their next election. And does this sound to you like somebody who ought to be in a position of power? Not to me. Wicked community, we should be sharing this with all voters. Don't just share the fact that another Republican is acting corruptly. Share the patterns. Look at all of his kicking and screaming he's doing after he abused his power. Look at the patterns it follows. Whataboutism, threatening people, using anything in the world to keep his position of power except laying out an argument. You might say, oh, but he already tried. He's saying here that they wouldn't let him. Well, he posted his argument publicly. He's talking to the press right here. He could have said exactly what happened and why. He didn't, because the truth isn't good for him. He's not an honest man. If you feel, and by the way, you shouldn't, but if you feel that Paxton, former Attorney General Paxton, I don't know how to address him now, represents your viewpoints, you should find a non-corrupt person, if you're in Texas, to represent those viewpoints. Simple as that. Pick better representatives, and don't defend representatives who aren't worthy of your defense. Because this makes everything Republicans believe in, let me tell you, it makes me think that they don't really believe in anything. Because everybody who says they believe in these things behaves like this, from what I've seen. One of the key responsibilities of the General Investigating Committee is to look beyond partisan affiliation in order to take the necessary steps to protect the institution that is our state and government. One of the few times I have truly agreed with a Republican post-2016. Post-2001, what am I talking about? We did just that with today's... we did just that today with this resolution. All right, let's talk about what we learned from this. Doesn't matter what party you're in. Doesn't matter what party does this stuff. I just know I don't need to encourage Democrats to eat our own. We love it. And I stand by that. We should keep booting people out happily. We should have high standards for our representatives, in other words. And I encourage Republican voters to do the same. There's other people that can do for you whatever it is you think Ken Paxton was doing for you. But when you allow someone like Ken Paxton to be the person that represents those views, and there's not a major backlash for being a corrupt SOB, then those views, rightly, will not be taken seriously anymore. They shouldn't be. Because clearly that's just an excuse being used because you're unable to live up to them. You're unable to talk about what you really want. I don't know. I don't care. I don't want to see support for people like this anymore. And I'm not going to both sides it. It's not. I stress this. Just like I stress that I'm happy to go after Democrats, I'm happy to also say it's not a problem shared equally among the parties. This is a Republican problem. Just the naked corruption. Paxton's furious that the Republicans in Texas actually are having some standards. And what's he doing about it? Well, he's reacting exactly like we see Donald Trump react. Exactly like we see Ron DeSantis react. Exactly like we see all these dudes react when they get in trouble. Unable to address the facts, falling back on threats. Generally speaking, acting like a caricature of a mobster in a low budget movie. That was the actual Attorney General of Texas, and oh hey, by the way, denied the legitimacy, good God, of the 2020 election. So, if you generally vote Republican, quit supporting that kind of stuff. That bum's got to go. You generally don't vote Republican, you should be talking to Republicans about things like this. Talk about the broad strokes. Talk about what it looks like when a dishonest person is trying to defend themselves. It's good to have in your kit for making America a civilized country again. Let's see what the wicked community has to say. Zix, in one of the episodes of Between Two Wars, there is a complete Republican playbook. This has all been tried before. Interesting. Lulu Girl, and they want to restrict what we learn from history. Yep. It is not a coincidence that these folks go after education at every opportunity. They have always, they will always, so long as they need to trick people into voting for them. Republican Party literally meets all 14 characteristics of fascism. SS 1964. No need to twist into a pretzel to fit them in the descriptions. It's like he wrote them in the past, knowing this party. Yeah. Yep. Let me look up here a little bit. Mars Falcon. Crime is only bad when perceived enemies do it, Jake, and tens of millions require zero evidence to believe any accusation. Yeah. Jesse Jennings says, nah, when people toe the party line like zealots, it's what makes me think they have no moral compass. Exactly. Good. Jesse, if you vote Republican for the rest of your life, I'll be shocked and dismayed, but if as a Republican voter, you insist that the candidates you vote for actually behave, that'll make me real happy, man. And that'll do a lot to earn back some of the reputation lost by this party. Crime is only bad when... Oh, we talked about that. Yes, Wireless Mike, and they always cry witch hunt. Yeah. Andrew Woznicki, I had to look up the 14 characters, Mars. It is literally the Republican motto. Okay, you know what? I'm going to do it. Bonus segment. Hold up. Hell, let's record this. Why not? Salty Saturday is always more casual. Well, we've got a suggestion here, rather a viewer comment saying that the 14 characteristics of fascism seem to align with the Republican Party. I'm going to look this up live. Let's see. What are the 14 characteristics of fascism? Not heard of this. I thought I had, actually. Yeah. Okay, no, never mind. So, historian Ian Kershaw once wrote that trying to define fascism is like trying to nail jelly to the wall. I had heard that about C++ programming. That's where I thought it came from. A significant number of scholars agree that a fascist regime is foremost an authoritarian form of government, although not all, this is Wikipedia, y'all, although not all authoritarian regimes are fascist. Fair enough. Authoritarianism is thus a defining characteristic, but most scholars will say that more distinguishing traits are needed to make an authoritarian regime classified as fascist. Okay, so break it down for me. Umberto Eco, in his 1995 essay, Fascism, lists 14 general properties of fascist ideology. He argues that it is not possible to organize these into a coherent system, but that it is enough that one of them be present to allow fascism to coagulate around it. Interesting. He uses the term fascism as a generic description of different historical forms of it. 14 properties are as follows. The cult of tradition, characterized by cultural syncretism, I don't know what that is, even at the risk of internal contradiction. Well, that sounds right. When all truth has already been revealed by tradition, no new learning can occur, only further interpretation and refinement. Interesting. The rejection of modernism, which views the rationalistic development of Western culture since the Enlightenment as a descent into depravity. Let me make sure I understand what they mean by the Enlightenment. Also known as the Age of Reason, was an intellectual and philosophical movement that occurred in Europe in the 17th and 18th centuries, so 18 and 1900s. No, 16 and 1700s. Yeah, that makes more sense. With global influence and effect. Okay. I am not a historian, even though I love documentaries about Napoleon. The cult of action for action's sake, number 3, which dictates that action is of value in itself and should be taken without intellectual reflection. Oh, yeah, that's sounding real familiar. This, says Eco, is connected with anti-intellectualism and irrationalism, and often manifests in attacks on modern culture and science. Disagreement is treason. Fascism devalues intellectual discourse and critical reasoning as barriers to action, as well as, all right, you need to hear this underlined. Fascism devalues intellectual discourse. What we're attempting, sorry, your dance partner here's got 2 left feet, but nonetheless, it's an honest attempt, and critical reasoning as barriers to action, as well as out of fear that such analysis will expose the contradictions embodied in synchronistic faith. Fear of difference, number 5, which fascism seeks to exploit and exacerbate. Anti-trans panic, anyone? By the way, disagreement is treason. If y'all were around during the Iraq War. Yeah. Fear of difference, which fascism seeks to exploit and exacerbate, often in the form of racism or an appeal against foreigners and immigrants. This was written in 1995. Appeal to a frustrated middle class, fearing economic pressure from the demands and aspirations of lower social groups. Obsession with a plot and the hyping up of an enemy threat. The Great Storm, anyone? When's that coming? This often combines an appeal to xenophobia with a globalist, with a fear of disloyalty and sabotage from marginalized groups living within the society. I'm going to speed through this because you're right. Jesus Christ, you're right. Fascist societies rhetorically cast their enemies as, at the same time, too strong and too weak. On the other hand, fascists play up the power of certain disfavored elites to encourage their followers a sense of grievance and humiliation. George Soros, anyone? Is that a disfavored elite? Yeah, I think so. On the other hand, fascist leaders point... By the way, Soros should not have the influence he has. I'm going to surprise you there. He shouldn't. But neither should the remaining Koch brother. Neither should any of these overpaid jackasses. On the other hand, fascist leaders point to the decadence of those elites as proof of their ultimate feebleness in the face of an overwhelming popular will. Pacifism is trafficking with the enemy, number 9, because life is permanent warfare. There must always be an enemy to fight. Both fascist Germany under Hitler and Italy under Mussolini worked to first organize and clean up their respective countries and then build the war machines that they later intended to and did use, despite Germany being under the Treaty of Versailles and not to build military force. Okay. I mean, we knew that. Contempt for the weak, which is uncomfortably married to a chauvinistic popular elitism, in which every member of society is superior to the outsiders by virtue of belonging to the in-group. 11, we're almost there. Everybody is educated to become a hero, which leads to the embrace of a cult of death. As Eco observes, the fascist hero is impatient to die. In his impatience, he more frequently sends other people to death. Machismo, which sublimates the difficult work of permanent war and heroism into the sexual sphere. Fascists hold both a disdain for women, what did we just talk about, and intolerance and condemnation of non-standard sexual habits, homosexuals. From chastity to homosexuality. Selective populism. The people, conceived monolithically, have a common will, distinct from and superior to the viewpoint of any individual. As no mass of people can ever be truly unanimous, the leader holds himself as the interpreter of the popular will, though truly he dictates it. Trump. And finally, 14. Newspeak. Fascism employs and promotes an impoverished vocabulary in order to limit critical reasoning. That is one of the best suggestions I have ever heard. Yes, that is basically what the Republican Party is all about. That's certainly what it was inching towards over my lifetime, from when we got Newt Gingrich appearing, rearing his filthy head in politics till now. And that's, I mean, if Trump actually bothered to put out a platform, it would look something like that. Great suggestion. The 14, what do they call it? Symptoms of fascism? Yeah, it's indistinguishable from being a modern Republican politician. Don't vote for him. It's a criminal party. They're bad people. The politicians. And the vast majority, generally speaking. Not people who have an interest in decency. But hey, it has always been this way. Let's do the next segment. I want to talk to you guys about Henry Kissenger and how he's filth. Oh, it's Salty Saturday. I'm allowed to be a petty, what do you call it? A petty little boy. Oofa doofa. Here we go. Well, one of my favorite folks on television is a gentleman by the name of Mehdi Hasan. Whether you like him or not, I got to tell you this. He is a great representative of what a progressive believes. Nothing he's about to tell you is untrue. You might not agree with it, but these are facts. When he states an opinion, he makes it clear that it's an opinion. So, if you want to know the facts that progressives are working with, and you want to know, generally speaking, what a progressive view of those facts are, check out what Mehdi Hasan has to say.
It's Henry Kissinger's 100th birthday.
Yesterday.
Yes, the man who served as National Security Advisor and Secretary of State to two Republican presidents, Richard Nixon and Gerald Ford, the author of more than a dozen best-selling books on foreign policy and grand strategy, and a man who's been described as arguably the most famous and controversial diplomat of the 20th century, turns a century old on Saturday, May the 27th. In fact, this past Monday, Kissinger blew out the candles on his 100th birthday cake on the Economic Club of New York stage in front of an adoring audience. And remember, it's not just conservatives who worship at the altar of the Henry Kissinger. Establishment liberals, top Democrats even, have fallen over one another to associate themselves with the great Kissenger, to heap praise upon his ginormous intellect and his...
Hey, if you really don't like either party, I'm not saying you give lip service to not liking either party. I mean, you literally have no loyalty to either party. Consider being a progressive. You'll be in good company. Yes, Mehdi Hassan is dead on. Neoliberal is the word for most, not all, admittedly, but most conservative Democrats. Neoliberals love Henry Kissinger. It's not even fair to say the conservative Democrats. Honestly, there were Green Party people, folks. There were Green Party people in the early 2000s, if I recall correctly, who would say kind things about this guy. I think we've done good so far, but with ghouls like this, with people like George W. Bush as well, with people who have had their reputations laundered back in the era where nobody really paid attention to this stuff, we need to put in the effort, no matter what side we're on, but especially if we're on the Democratic side, to not let people get away with praising this war criminal. Good job, Mehdi. We're calling it out.
Establishment liberals, top Democrats even, have fallen over one another to associate themselves with the great Kissenger, to heap praise upon his ginormous intellect and historic achievements. Barack Obama's administration honored Kissinger with a special award. Hillary Clinton called him her friend and said she relied on his counsel. Samantha Power, the self-styled champion of humanitarian interventions, went to a baseball game with Kissinger.
Jackass.
And Joe Biden, when he was a senator, toasted Kissinger. Although, to be fair, he hasn't yet invited him to the White House like all of his predecessors have done.
Good.
But look, here's what I want to do to mark Kissinger's 100th birthday. I want to talk about some of the many, many people around the world who didn't get to live till 100 or even 60, 70 or 80 because of Henry Kissinger, because of his support for brutal dictators, brutal regimes, brutal wars and war crimes. Let's start where else? In Southeast Asia. The war in Vietnam, which Kissinger may have ridiculously won a Nobel Peace Prize for ending, but which he prolonged and escalated in the first place, including a secret and illegal expansion of that bloody war to Laos and Cambodia. It was him. Thanks to a report released by the Department of Defense in 1973, we know that the National Security Council, headed by Henry A. Kissinger, approved each of the 3,875 Cambodia bombing raids in 1969 and 1970, as well as the methods for keeping them out of the newspapers. To quote Kissinger himself while instructing an all-out air assault on Cambodia, anything that flies on anything that moves. As Human Rights Watch noted in 2001, United States and South Vietnamese aerial bombings on Kissinger's watch left approximately 350,000 Laotian civilians and 600,000 Cambodian civilians dead. And just this past week, The Intercept reported...
All right. Lefties, let's practice pitching to right-wingers right here and now. We're talking about Kissenger, a classic neoliberal and conservative darling. By the way, neoliberalism is a conservative value, in case you're wondering. I know it's got the word liberal in it, but it's neoliberal from the 50s. So, let's practice our pitch. I think And hey, if Jesse, if you're still here, first of all, kudos for having thick skin. Second of all, tell me if I got this wrong. Just my assessment up until now. I'm going to guess that what conservatives hear when they get that spiel by Mehdi Hasan is that the thing that we're complaining about is all the killing he was responsible for. And you know what? That'd be correct. We don't like the lefties. We don't like the killing. But that's not, to me, what makes this the most egregious. Because guess what? Barack Obama did a whole lot of killing of innocents. He drone striked the Jim Christ out of folks, including an American citizen. But I don't think he's as bad as Kissenger, not just because of the scale of what he did, which was smaller, admittedly, in terms of his killing. Because of this moment. Right, y'all? Let me go back.
Watch left approximately 300. United States and South Vietnamese aerial bombings on Kissinger's watch left approximately 350,000 Laotian civilians and 600,000 Cambodian civilians dead. And just this past week, The Intercept reported, on the basis of U.S. military documents and eyewitness accounts from Cambodian survivors, that Kissenger is responsible for more civilian deaths in Cambodia than was previously known.
Responsible for more than was previously known. Worked to keep it out of the headlines. In other words, in this country, where what the people say is supposed to go, he lied to the people. Now let's just assume that he genuinely believed he was right, that this wasn't all just a naked power grab for the sake of having more power. I think it was, but I don't know. So let's assume the less awful thing. And let's assume he truly believed this was necessary. For some reason, killing these people, it was necessary for the health of the United States. Here's the deal. I have not met any Americans who are not, that I suspect are not willing to die when it comes down to it for the cause of freedom. Truly, the sweetest old ladies I've met get a hard look in their eye when they're talking about how important freedom is to them. A heck of a lot of Americans are willing to kill for the cause of freedom. Very few Americans are willing to murder for their own freedom. There's a massive moral difference between those three things. You want to know whether or not what that punk was doing was murder, even if it was for freedom. It's pretty telling that he wasn't willing to let us know about it. He acted in our name without our consent. That's the problem with Henry Kissinger. Yes, the killing is bad, too. Obama's killing was bad. Bush's killing was bad. I don't think Obama should be in prison. I do think Bush should be in prison. I think this guy should be in prison. What's the difference? Lying to the American people. Bush lied about the weapons of mass destruction. He acknowledged it. He made a joke about it. We went to war for 2 decades. Kissinger lied. Kept this stuff out of the headlines. Kept this stuff out of the press. Took steps to make sure we didn't know about it. Killed a whole lot of people.
And yet, Kissinger has never apologized for what he did to Laos or Cambodia, instead defending those bombing campaigns as legitimate attacks on North Vietnamese forces and saying he failed to see any moral issue with them. Still, as the late, great Anthony Bourdain once wrote, witness what Henry did in Cambodia, the fruits of his genius for statesmanship, and you will never understand why he's not sitting in the dock at The Hague next to Milosevic. Then there's Argentina. In 1976, a coup d'etat overthrew the elected president and replaced Eva Perón with a military junta. That junta then launched what's been called the Dirty War, the hunting down of political dissidents, of socialists, trade unionists, students. And they launched it with the approval, encouragement even, of Henry Kissinger. We know this thanks to declassified documents, which the New Yorker reported on, writing, 2 days after the coup, Kissinger was briefed by his Assistant Secretary of State, who warned him, I think also we've got to expect a fair amount of repression, probably a good deal of blood in Argentina before too long. Kissinger replied, whatever chance they have, they will need a little encouragement, because I do want to encourage them. In a meeting with the Argentine foreign minister 2 months later, Kissinger advised him, in the words of the New Yorker, winkingly, quote, we are aware you are in a difficult period.
I gotta not read the comments when I'm doing these, because you guys are cracking me up. It's a bipolar vibe I got now. I'm hearing, a recounting of the worst tragedies that America has been responsible for, the worst crimes. But I'm laughing hysterically at the comments. You guys are crushing it. I might just do a show where I'm reading the funniest ones. It's a thing of beauty. But anyway, look, when you're talking to Republicans about this, keep focusing on the principles. I think the problem we have, largely, when we're discussing this stuff, is assuming that morality is the same between the people talking. It's not. Generally speaking, I've seen just a heck of a lot of Republicans who don't hear any of this stuff, because right at the beginning, they hear that it takes place in another country, and they fall for U.S. propaganda instantly and think, well, no. All that nightmare stuff, that's supposed to happen in other countries. That's how we stay free and safe in our little bubble, in our jammy jams. We need them to suffer and boil and be clawing at the borders of our country, desperately trying to get in. Well, we're fine, because that's how we stay fine. We exist on suffering. They don't think those exact words, obviously, but that's the mentality that crops up, and it shuts down all other conversation. All this evil done in our name that really does make a lot of the world hate us, and rightly so, because we refuse to do anything about it. I saw Ukraine mentioned, just like, until recently, Russians let Putin do what he does. Invade another country, kill civilians. Because look at the interviews with Russians on the street. They don't have a clear understanding of the war. They just know it's happening and they support it. They have Z bumper stickers, not unlike our rebel flags, openly supporting an awful set of actions. This is that. We need to make the conversation about principles. Hey, guess what? That difficult period he's talking about, that's a coup. That's a coup we supported in that country. Taking away the will of the people again. The will of the people said they wanted Ava. Then we said, nope, you can't have them. That's imperialism. That is obviously not an acceptable way to conduct ourselves. And if we don't hold the people who do this accountable, then we have condoned it. We are also accountable. We are also responsible for the crime. When you're talking with people that aren't going to agree with you as to whether or not you should give a damn about other people, you need to make it about the principle of the thing. Is this the way that we conduct ourselves? This is about our personal honor as a country. This is our reputation around the world, even if we insist on being ignorant to it. And we're not going to be able to spend the rest of history pointing our guns at other people and telling them they have to say we're nice. and good and their ally or will shoot. Doesn't work like that anymore. I would have loved if at the height of this Cold War standoff, if we had decided of our own volition to start acting like a civilized group of people, but we didn't. And now we are leaving the bad old days, even though that's when we were kings. We're leaving them. The world handles things with economics and conversations, for the most part, these days. It devastates a country to have an import suddenly not imported. Much more than a mortar shell does. And it's only going to increase from there. So now we have to, for our own self-interest. You can still be a selfish prick and choose to do the decent thing. We have to increase our soft power, our influence. And the way we're going to do that is by holding these people who abused our hard power to account. Certainly these old skeletons in our closet, but yeah, the new ones too.
We understand you must establish authority. If there are things that have to be done, you should do them quickly. Somewhere between 20 and 30,000 people are believed to have been arrested, tortured, and killed in Argentina's dirty war. As The Guardian notes, many bodies have never been found. No birthday parties for them. Then there is East Timor, which was invaded by Indonesia in December 1975, an invasion that led to the death of at least 100,000 people over the next 2 decades plus of Indonesian occupation, according to a UN-backed Truth Commission. On the eve of that invasion, literally the day before, Kissenger, alongside President Ford, met with Indonesian dictator General Suharto and basically gave him the green light to invade. To quote Kissinger's advice to Suharto from a declassified document, "It is important that whatever you do succeeds quickly, but that it would be better if it were done after we returned to the United States." Then there's East Pakistan, now Bangladesh, which was attacked by a military-ruled West Pakistan, now just Pakistan, in 1971, a conflict that killed hundreds of thousands of Bengalis and displaced millions. And yet, as Princeton professor Gary Bass has shown, based on declassified documents and White House tapes, Kissinger stood stoutly behind Pakistan's generals, supporting the murderous regime at many of the most crucial moments. And when a US diplomat on the ground in what was then East Pakistan sent a cable to Washington warning of a genocide, Kissinger called the man a maniac and had him dismissed from his post. I could go on and on and on, sadly. I didn't even get to Chile and Kissinger's support for General Pinochet's coup there.
I will. Here's why that's important and why I think that is probably the one I would have focused on out of all of these. Despite the just insane death toll that this murderer is responsible for. Chile, however the hell you're supposed to say it, they were going socialist. What they did was nationalize a lot of industries. After the Pinochet coup, after Kissinger supported neoliberal policies, their economy nosedived as all of these industries were privatized again, except for one. Just one industry was held on to, and that, I believe, was the steel production. Well, guess what? That is the only reason the country survived. That's the only reason they were able to fund themselves, is that they held on to that one policy from the previous government, which was socialist. It was fear. We always hear that vaguely, these people have to suffer so that we don't. Problem is, the we they're talking about always is the rich people, is your boss, not you. Because these countries that we sabotaged at Kissinger's behest largely tended to be left-leaning or tended to support an ideology that, if it were demonstrated to work, would cause people to question the way we run our government. And guess what? We don't run it so good. In fact, every single country that has adopted neoliberal policies has been worse off for it, and they have consistently done worse and worse on the world stage until they ditch neoliberal policies. Neoliberal policies are just policies that say everything can be defined as right or wrong based on if a private business profits from it. And that's no way to run a country. It's a great way to run a business, terrible way to run a country, because a country is not a business.
His betrayal of Iraq's Kurds. Kissinger, of course, has for years denied any criminal culpability for any of this. But he did cancel a trip to South America in 2002 after Chile opened a probe into the Pinochet coup. As human rights lawyer Bruce Broomhall told the New York Times back then, quote, "I think it's clear that Kissinger is now one of many, many officials who have to think twice before they travel." As historian Greg Grandin of Yale has argued, a full tally hasn't been done, but a back-of-the-envelope count would attribute 3, maybe 4 million deaths to Kissinger's actions. So where is the accountability? The reckoning? Where is justice, dare I ask? In his 2001 book, The Trial of Henry Kissinger, the late Christopher Hitchens called for Kissinger to be prosecuted for war crimes, for crimes against humanity, and for offences against common or customary or international law, including conspiracy to commit murder, kidnap, and torture. And yet Kissinger this week celebrates his landmark 100th birthday with not an arrest warrant or war crimes tribunal in sight. So, congratulations, Henry. Pat yourself on the back for living such a long life, and as a free man, too. It's a shame so many millions of victims of your policies can't say the same.
No notes beyond what I've already given for Mehdi Hasan. 3 to 4 million deaths. The theme of today's show is don't get tired with debate. The reason we need to not get tired is because part of the strategy is to exhaust us. It's just to get the decent people of the country who are being serious about solving the problems of the United States and frankly, the rest of the world. You don't have to be watching from the United States for this to be relevant to you. It's the strategy to exhaust us. It always has been, and we've always been dealing with the same stuff. And take heart, because it used to be a lot more vague, and it used to take a lot longer. Right now, we're having these conversations, back, forth, instantaneous. Good. Yeah, we're seeing more cartoonish evil. People literally smearing feces on the walls of the Capitol building. But this evil was always there. It was always there. It just used to be more sophisticated. It used to have a friendly German accent who would talk like this and sound very reasonable and then ask us to kill 3 to 4 million innocents. It's always been here. So we have an advantage now. Things haven't gotten worse, they've gotten more obvious. We have an advantage now. The people who will not allow our freedom to be bought with murder. We have an advantage now. Take advantage of it. If you find yourself getting exhausted with the conversation, leave the conversation. Your energy, your enjoyment, your peace of mind is more important than convincing somebody who is not already on the side of the angels. Don't forget, you are also on the side of the angels. And we need everybody on that side to have their energy up. keep practicing like I've seen you guys practicing. I'm seeing the wicked community getting better and better at debating. And most of the things you're going to have to practice are going to be the things that you haven't seen a lot of focus on already. And there's a reason for that. Reason you haven't seen a lot of, the reason you need the practice with it is because you haven't seen the focus on them. You've got great arguments. Get used to not making them. Get used to setting them aside. When you see somebody making objections, get used to just listening to what their objections are. And then go home and think about it. Just think about what they were saying, what they were really saying, what they were accidentally saying. Take advantage of the fact that we're in 2023, not 2024. In 2023, we have the time to hone our skills. We should use it for that. Arguments we make now might not be remembered a year from now to the casual voter. But arguments we learn how to make now, that is going to stick with us. And we will be able to deploy the best, the sharpest, the most devastating arguments in 2024. And now it's clear what we're dealing with. Now on national television, we have a MSNBC host telling television exclusive watchers that Henry Kissinger is not somebody they should be praising. In other words, people are starting to wake up. They're getting woke. Go figure. Good. See what y'all have to say. Mars Falcon, dog whistles and euphemisms used to be tools of the trade. You are spot on, Jake. Well, thank you. Thank you much. The anti-corporatists, we have the unfair advantage of being on the correct side. 100%. Yes. Andrew Nikki, I get exhausted just reading the conversations, let alone getting involved with them. Yeah, but you know what? It's like lifting weights at the gym, said the guy who did it once. It was meant to be literally one time. I go to the gym all the time, but it's for the wonderful vending machine selection. But truly, it's a similar principle. What you're doing now is observing. What you're doing now doesn't necessarily feel satisfying, but there's a benefit to it. We're going to fail 9 out of 10, 99 out of 100 attempts to sway somebody who's, getting ready to strap on the suicide vest for MAGA or whatever the next insane thing is going to be. But we'll get a couple. And what is most important isn't even that you convince the person you're talking to. And that's the most important thing to remember. There is somebody quietly watching most times. That's who we're trying to convince. Doesn't help when the host bashes his own mic with his face. But occasionally such a host gets lucky and has just the best community on the internet. So together, as a group effort, we're going to be successful. We have seen positive signs already. And by the way, people's new attention to all of this stuff is the reason why we have Paxton in Texas out, because people are actually paying attention. Mars Falcon, there's an old joke about why there are never coups d'etats in the United States of America, because there is no U.S. embassy there. Oh, God. Tamara Chance, it is over 100 years since World War I, and it seems humanity has learned nothing. Kissinger was born between 2 world wars. Yeah. And Mars Falcon, even funnier, Jake, they will never hear any of this stuff while simultaneously claiming it is everyone else that is an echo chamber. Beyond parody. I know. Oh, Jess Rush. Yes, Mars is cracking me up today. Anti-corporatist too. Yeah. Y'all are a hoot, I'm telling you. Well, tell you what. I want to really keep advocating for something. Yeah, this is gonna be a super long show, y'all, and I won't be hurt if y'all got to abandon me at some point. I understand it. There's just so much I want to talk about today. I really want to stress this: state pride is something we should bring back. Local pride, for example, yesterday. Oh, what the hell? Let's record this. Yesterday, I said yada yada. People don't know what a millage is, yada, yada, yada. But then I didn't define what a millage is. That's me not doing my job. I'm supposed to do that, so I apologize. A millage, if you don't follow local politics, is the amount paid per $1,000 of taxable income. So if you made $1,000 of taxable income, it's the amount taken out of that in taxes. That's it. And local communities use millages all the time to raise money based on their property values for things that the community needs. Here's a letter I got today reminding me of why it's important that I define these things. Dear your old pal Jake's community members, I am pleased to send this updates on the accomplishment of the community schools during the 2022-2023 year. I also want to convey my gratitude for the overwhelming support of the community recreation millage renewal this past November. The millage ensures the community pool and fitness center maintains first-class recreational facilities for our students, staff, and community members. It also enables the enrichment department to provide a wide variety of community programming and special events. If you are not currently a member, learn more by visiting our website at thevoidwherejakelives.net. It's that simple. Local politics matters a heck of a lot. State politics matters a heck of a lot. National politics gets talked about the most because it affects everybody. Sure. Affects everybody a little bit. But state politics is hugely important. And guess what? State politics really do eventually affect everybody. Because the area we live determines what we are used to, the treatment we're used to receiving, how we view government. If your local government does a lot for you, then you expect your federal government to do a lot for you. If your local government does nothing for you, you learn the lesson that government does nothing for you. A lot of folks that don't really follow politics that closely are under the impression that the government is just a way to throw away your money. Well, if they're from a conservative area, where conservatives traditionally try to convince people that the government does nothing for you, yeah, they have an accurate view, at least of the governments they've experienced. Local politics matter. So, if you see a millage, police, fire, schools, roads, generally, you should vote for it. Yeah, even if you're a lefty that doesn't really think the cops need more money, you should be funding the government. And you should appreciate that the way these things work on a local level really does inform what people think of when they imagine how it's supposed to work on a national level. We got a segment with David Pakman coming up. And by the way, if you don't want to support the police millage, I don't know your local police department. You might be perfectly justified. But I would say, remember that you are demonstrating for all what national government is supposed to look like. We got something from David Pakman with some state pride that I want to show you. Ooh, stand by while I set this up. It's going to be a minute. Ooh, I'm seeing the comments as I'm setting this up, and I'm loving it. This year I finally. Oh hell. I got it. It's too. Yeah, you know what? We're just gonna. Hey, how about that? Why don't we start this off with reading comments? I know it's crazy. Well, major fan of the fact that states seem to be a source of pride for folks again. We've got a great example here from Zix. This year I finally read through the blurbs in the local election pamphlet on the locals up for grab. Yes, good man. Not that it really matters in my state, but I wanted to make sure it stays that way. Fair enough. Good. Ooh, wireless mic making me feel better. Nothing wrong with the long show. Well, cool. It's going to be clips that go on for days, baby. Lulu Girl, typically it makes your property value increase. Millages. Yes. But it does that. That is the cost, generally. I say but like it's a terrible thing for your property value to rise. But it can be bad. But it does that in exchange for making, whether you like that or not about your property value, in exchange for making your community generally better. But regardless of whether or not you end up being for a specific millage, the idea that you understand what a major impact your vote can have at a local level, I'm talking your district, that's the really key thing. Hey, speaking of more local politics, let's look at somebody with some state pride. There was a fella by the name of David Pakman who recently had a caller on his show. Pause that there. I'd like us to listen to that call because this guy is proud of his state. And he should be. Let's talk about this. All right, well, there we go. Talk about this. It's a David Pakman caller.
Yes, I can.
Yeah, I'm glad to report from a winning part of the country in a few different ways. I mean, we just got the most progressive mayor in history elected here.
True.
And I'm also originally from Minnesota, and a lot of great things. I don't know if you've been hearing about that. A lot of great things been coming out of like the Minnesota legislature recently.
I heard some. We covered one story. Yeah, I mean, so you're feeling good about the part of the country you're in, it sounds like.
Yeah. Honestly, I'm a member of the local YDSA here, the Democratic Socialists of America, and we were pretty excited. We didn't endorse Brandon Johnson directly because he's not like a socialist, but pretty heavily, I think he got support from our sector. A lot of activity going out and doing work on the ground, canvassing, talking to people at polling stations and that sort of.
Doing work on the ground, canvassing. Member of the Young Democratic Socialists of America. The kids are all right. I mean, my word. Makes me feel so good. Way to go, young buck. And yes, hell yes. We should take pride in these state victories. We should hold them up, hold them high. I'm so proud to see Americans, left and right, and in particular, the wicked community, getting out there and taking responsibility for their politicians. I've heard people in the wicked community who are from states that have done shameful things saying, I'm sorry this happened. Good. It's not because you should be whipping yourself constantly, no. But we're acknowledging that we have the power. And we are in a struggle. The other side of that is also, we need to let ourselves feel pride in things like this. By the way, if you're from Tennessee, you should feel pride in the Tennessee 3. Hell yeah. Good job. Hell yes. Those 3 are heroes. They're going to be national figures for the rest of their careers. You should take pride in the heights they will reach. You deserve it. Similarly, this guy celebrating Brandon Johnson. Yes, absolutely.
Thing.
So, Brett, as an actual democratic socialist yourself, I'm curious.
Oh, this gets interesting.
Do you align with the socialist perspective of socializing ownership of businesses? Like, is that something businesses should be required to do by government?
I'm definitely on the, I guess you'd call it the more conservative side of the democratic socialists. It's a pretty.
I just realized. But the mayor of Chicago, Brandon Johnson. So I guess he's from Illinois.
Big tent party. As far as like.
Oh, yes. But also there are, as he's saying, there's a huge spectrum of people on the Democrats. There's also a huge spectrum of people amongst the Democratic Socialists of America. I consider myself to be borderline socialist. I'm currently to the right, I think, of your average DSA member. But I'll say this: I've been flying left for decades, and I'm sure if and when I make it to old man status, which I'm scratching at the door now, I'm sure I'll be an insufferable lefty. All the fully whatever the leftist thing is probably where I'll end up. But it's a spectrum.
Current, like, practical boots on the ground activism, like what we're what we are advocating for, isn't like, isn't normally that extreme, like turning all businesses into co-ops immediately through an executive order. I mean, a lot of people, again, in the organization would disagree with me on that.
Yeah. No, I'm just asking you. Like, what would be your biggest socialist belief, would you say?
Yeah, I would say that, like, I would be in favor of things as extreme as probably, like, breaking up large corporations, making more things, like, publicly owned, like, deprivatizing like infrastructure, things like that. I mean, like, start with like the big things where it seems very reasonable that you and I would probably agree on, like public transport or things that like other countries socialize well.
Yeah.
And then I would just probably keep moving forward on that until it stops being effective. But I feel
are
like
you sure you're a socialist? That's interesting. It's not. I mean, it sounds like you're more of like a social democrat, which is a form of capitalism.
It goes on. Let's just have the wicked community talk about it, because what he just said is so interesting to me. So the Overton window, that window of what the acceptable political discourse is, has been moving right for decades and decades and decades. I say 3 because what I've witnessed. To the point where somebody that believes that we should break up monopolies, like we did with AT&T in the 90s, is working with the Democratic Socialists, and they believe that we should invest in public transportation. And they're caucusing with the Democratic Socialists. They're working with them. I shouldn't say caucusing. They're working with them. Those used to be things that weren't even up for negotiation. Of course, we're going to break up monopolies. That's what you do in the United States. That is the well-regulated part of well-regulated capitalism. Congratulations. If you're a company that needs to be broken up, you're filthy rich. You are filthy rich. You won capitalism. Time to break it up. That's the end game. If this were the Vidya game world, this is where you start another playthrough. New playthrough plus. You're the executive that ran that company that had to get broken up. Enjoy your billions. It's much easier now. You get all the bennies. But you got to start a new company if you want to start from scratch, or you're going to have to compete against your former company as it's divided up, because that is how we stop Walmart from being our overlords. Public transportation didn't used to be a matter of debate. Of course you need public transportation. What you're going to expect, how are you going to pull yourself up by the bootstraps if you can't maneuver around the country? You can't get from point A to point B. Well, you just take your car. Bootstraps. You don't have a car, you got bootstraps. Standard American values are now only represented by the most left of the left. That guy around the world would be considered a moderate. The guy is probably closer to what I think I am. How about you? Let me know in the comments. We're gonna look at him in a second. Where do you fall on the political spectrum? I don't know. Tell me. But I'll tell you this. The thing that makes me happiest about that call, aside from the vindication of David Pakman saying, what is a socialist, having the emotional skills there, I don't know what to call it, emotional intelligence, to ask the guy what his actual socialist stances are, because I didn't hear any. Other than acknowledging that the government should pay for some things and should regulate capitalism to some degree. But the thing that made me happiest about that was just the guy taking pride in the states that he had effect in. Yes, good. That's where we're going to get our energy built up. We're going to be able to spend it on doing more things, sure. But we're going to get it from appreciating our victories, of which there have been many. Trump, in court, has now been established to have sexually violated E. Jean Carroll. Fox, in court, has now been established to have lied about the 2020 election, deceived its audience, intentionally so. That's a statement of fact. We're racking up victories by putting pressure on the people who are supposed to have been handling this and have never done so. We're racking up victories. I would say look to your states and rack up as many victories as you can and then brag about them. I'm jealous right now of Minnesota. Good. I'm real jealous. I'm jealous, oh my God, of Georgia. Never thought I'd be jealous of Georgia. I never thought I'd be more jealous of Georgia after William Street opened up there, the Adult Swim production house. But I am, because Fani Willis beat Dana Nessel to the punch, and Fani Willis isn't even the attorney general; she's a district attorney, and she beat Dana Nessel to the punch. Damn it! This is healthy. Keep encouraging it. Take pride in the victories. Brag about the victories. Now ain't the time to be humble. There is no greater honor for an American, and I would dare say for all countries around the world having witnessed World War II in our histories, no greater honor than bashing the fascies. Good. Take pride in the democratic process. Delighted by that David Pakman caller. Let's find out where you guys stand politically. If you're comfortable saying, let me know in the comments. Have a look. Wireless mic, progressive here, registered Dem. Heck yes. Oh, God, Mars Falcon. Living wage is radical speak in the USA. Sad. Yeah. Lulu Girl, I'm a progressive, liberal, Democrat. I try to be nice and helpful to others because that's how I want people to be to me. There it is. I think you've just you've nailed my personal political views. That's what it boils down to. Well done. Jess Rush, I've only lived here almost 3 years. It's beautiful and hardly any snow. Oh, where are you? Cleveland. Oh my God, I was literally just in Cleveland. Guys, if you haven't been to Cleveland, Ohio in like the last, I don't know, 15 years, I was a kid the last time I was there, and then I visited recently. Cleveland is amazing. Maybe I just didn't go to the cool places when I was a kid, but Cleveland is like a fancy metropolis now. Holy crap. I had a blast. You live in a cool part of the country, for sure. One more thing I really want to show you, by the by. Yeah, here we go. Well, let's hope I got it. So one thing we're going to have to prepare for, believe it or not, is victory. I don't know about you, but I think the last time we experienced victory, I think we thought, then we can all relax. Didn't work that way. We won in 2020, we being people that want the country run seriously. Won in 2020, and we did not, we were new to demanding our government do things. We thought, surely they've learned their lesson. No. So here's the question. If we win, how do we handle it? I often say Michigan is a microcosm for the rest of the country, but I found a better one. We're going to talk about it. Well, on WYCD Wicked, I often say that Michigan is a great microcosm for the rest of the country because it's just the state is going through similar things just slightly before the rest of the country due to the way our elections happen to shake out, particularly around 2018. I found a better one that I think we should look at. Right now, the Brexit scandal has a lot of parallels to what is going on in the United States with the politicians lying about why they're doing things. They're truly they were just doing Brexit to appease racist talking points that they had put in place. They had blamed all of their problems on foreigners and having to work with other people and be mature-ass adults. They had blamed the conservatives in England, in the UK, I should say, had blamed all the country's woes on that. Well, came time for Brexit, and their equivalent of MAGA pushed it, and it was a spectacular disaster. The United States, due to the Democrats being weak, has yet to have the reckoning with MAGA. They pushed a bunch of hurtful policies that demonstrably hurt the country. They broke the law, their politicians. A heck of a lot. I was rightly corrected yesterday. Both the DNC and RNC headquarters had pipe bombs planted by them. By them, oh God, had planted by them pipe bombs. Wow, Jesus, how do I say that? Somebody tried to bomb both those headquarters on January 6th. Well, we haven't reckoned with that yet, but when we do reckon with it, we're going to need to have a playbook in place for the refugees. It's a major topic of conversation on this channel, and it's what I want to wrap up today's show with. How are we going to handle the people that fell for the grift? And as harsh as I am on Republican voters, and boy, I don't hold back. I hope that I've communicated to you that the fault ultimately is with the grifters, not the grifted. And if I fail to, by the way, correct me. Demand that I be better than that. if I haven't lived up to that, because that is the correct take. We can be angry at the people that got conned, but not nearly as angry as the con artists, or we're going to be susceptible to the con artists again. We're going to spend all of our energy trying to punish the J6 rioters and not the J6 organizers. That's not acceptable. So how do we deal with this? Well, let's look at how folks generally considered to be on the left are dealing with the Brexit fallout now that their politicians are just admitting what happened. This is James O'Brien, by the way. Definitely recommend giving this guy a listen.
Off goes another coward. Off goes Dominic Raab. Away he runs. Today is a day upon which one of the, quote, ardent Brexiteers, end quote, one of the people who would tour studios accusing those of us who knew what was going to happen of thinking you were racist or stupid or being condescending, those of us who insisted on trying to insert facts into these conversations where they would have just flags and feelings, we have once again got that very sad sense of vindication. Off goes another one. Off goes another coward.
You hearing the parallels? An avoidance of facts, falling back on an obscure view of patriotism to make their arguments, othering people. Yeah. And what is O'Brien saying? He's saying, well, we're sad to be right again. So watch what he does with it. Let's see what we can learn here.
Off goes Dominic Raab. Away he runs. Away he runs. And I just want today, it may be a bit premature, it may be a bit early, I may still be a little bit high on my own supply from the success of the conversation we had after Farage admitted that Brexit had failed. I want today to know how you feel if you bought what Dominic Raab and his mates were selling. How do you feel about the fact that when you take it back to the shop and ask for a refund, the shutters are going to be down and the shopkeeper's going to be gone? I just want to have a little look at that. I just want to have a little look at that. So Dominic Raab is going. He's resigning. He's gone from insisting that his position was absolutely safe and he had nothing at all to answer for, and all of the people queuing up to accuse him of bullying were, oh, that's a bit of an echo, isn't it? Just like all the people pointing out Suella Braverman's latest breach of the ministerial code are smearing her. Dominic Raab's claim, until he was caught bang to rights, was that people accusing him of bullying or indeed reporting on him being a bully were just smearing him. That ship has sailed. The tide has gone out, and you can see who's still got their trunks on. And forgive this rather unpleasant image, but Dominic Raab has not. So how do you feel about that? Because I've been quite self-referential in this introduction, even more than usual, and I make no apology for that. It's important. Brexit is personal. It's been personal almost since it started, when people like Dominic Raab came after people like me on this radio station, telling blatant lies about me on this radio station in order to keep alive the lie that those of us who knew what was going to happen were somehow patronising people who'd fallen for the lies of men like Raab. That made it personal, and it remains personal. But we're not going to fall out about it, because at some point, reality was always going to return to the fray. So now that it's returning, and people like Raab are running away, how do you feel about the fact that you've staked so much on the Brexit that people like Dominic Raab and Nigel Farage sold to you? You may have fallen out with friends. You may have had blazing rows with family members and colleagues. You may have spent days on Twitter posting doctored photographs of people like me. You may have absolutely nailed your colours so firmly to the mast that you're wondering whether you're ever going to be able to tear them off again.
What I like about this is that if you take out the word Brexit, you can't tell if he's talking about the MAGA movement or Brexit. Yeah, there's people that have had fallings outs, whatever. There's people that have fell out, with their families over MAGA. Because at the end of the day, what they're supporting is attacking trans people or just anybody on the left, making sure black people still get killed by cops for no damn reason, making sure that black people live in poverty. All for excuses. All over reasons that we have demonstrated time and time again to not be true. It's lies designed to get us to fight each other so that we don't do anything about the people who are stealing from us, thieving from us. Your boss, if you work at a big company, if you work at a company with, hundreds of employees, your boss is a filthy thief, most likely. Statistically speaking, they are legally allowed to drain the value from your labor and give you just a tiny little piece of it. And we are going to be waking up to this more and more and more. If 2024 is successful and sane people take back the country with overwhelming support for, at a minimum, Democrats, hopefully progressives. Not conservative Democrats, but true progressives. If that happens, we will need to be addressing it with a stream very much like this. I hope he takes a call on this one because I actually want to hear. But it's Salty Saturday. I only watch the beginnings of these. Regardless, I think, so that we can have a genuine reaction. Regardless, I think this is the template we're going to be following. So another microcosm, just like we can use some states as an example of what the whole country is likely to be going through soon, and we can know how to react to it. Here's the dismount. As Brexit comes to be, the facts are undeniable, and there's a lot of folks having a come-to-Jesus moment. How he deals with it, this guy in particular, James O'Brien, I think is the template we're going to have to use, because we're going to have to understand these folks. We can't just say 70+ million Americans are irredeemable. It's forget right and wrong. It's not practical. And we live in nature where right and wrong are things that you can decide for yourself, but a lion will goddamn eat you. And we have to deal with reality first and foremost. So, these victims of a con, and the more I look at the echo chamber they get stuck in, the more I'm convinced that they are victims. The more we're going to have to get good at talking like this guy, and we're going to have to get a lineup of people we can lean on for how to deal with this.
And now the people that sold it to you are rolling over and running away.
Yes.
I'm not today interested in there is a brilliant Brexit, but it goes to a different school party. All right. That is, sadly, and I'm sure we'll find ways to build bridges soon, but that for me is still the gristle-headed gammon and pineapple party. I haven't got time or the energy. I know we'll all go.
MAGA, as led by Ron DeSantis, would be our equivalent in the United States.
Viral, and you'll end up feeling awful, and I'll be trending on Twitter, but you ring in to tell me how Brexit could have gone well, and I'll ask you how, and then we'll examine the detail, and you'll know nothing. So that's not yet. I'm not ready for that yet today. Got more important fish to fry. I'm ready today to talk to you as a unsatisfied customer of Dominic Raab. You believed what he sold. You bought what he...
Unsatisfied customers. That is a great way to address it.
He offered. You swallowed what he served. And now he's running away. How do you feel about him? 0345 6060 973. And how do you feel about you? Okay. I don't know how often we're going to do variations on this phone in, and it may be that we've gone a bit too early. That Farage admitting it's a failure one may just have been such an acute moment, such an undeniable milestone in the decline of support for this ludicrous project.
Nigel Farage was basically my understanding. He was basically the architect of Brexit. That was a long-time goal of his.
It just broke. It reached parts that other questions cannot reach. So we'll soon find out. But Dominic Raab, for me, was among the worst offenders because of his arrogance and because of his superciliousness, his unpleasantness, his almost performative obnoxiousness, dismissing detail, denigrating fact, claiming a better understanding of the issues than some of the finest experts in the world, never mind merely the country. And
global warming, anyone?
Doing it with such an air of bogus authority that I can understand how people might have fallen for it. It's not quite the demagogue like a Farage or the sort of pantomime penny farthing like a Jacob Rees-Mogg, just hoovering up support from people who truly believe that our class system is the work of God as opposed to the consequence of centuries of baked-in inequality. Raab was different. He wrote that book, of course, claiming that you were among the worst idlers in the world, that we were among the worst idlers in the world, and then
talking about welfare queens, anyone? Blaming the populace for the state the populace is in, as though the average person doesn't put in the average amount of work, ignoring the responsibility of a government, of a governing official.
Spent many years trying to disown almost everything he'd ever said. So, how do you feel about the disappearance from the scene of Dominic Raab? In the first instance, as someone who fell for it, and in the second instance, as someone like me, who knew it was going to happen, and has that sense, just as we had 2 weeks ago when Nigel Farage called it all a failure, just have that very sad sense of seeing what they've done to our country and knowing that there will be no consequences. So I guess we can do a little bit of joint therapy on this one.
Here's the thing. It's not just MAGA that we're going to have this conversation with. I asked y'all in an earlier segment, where do you stand politically? A lot of people said progressive. It's not just MAGA. Progressives are going to have these kinds of conversations with Democrats, conservative Democrats. What did he end that with? His refrain the whole time. Those of us who knew exactly how this was going to go and are sad to be correct. Doesn't that just sing the progressive song? Time and time again, we get these Hillary Clintons instead of Bernie Sanderses. Time and time again, we get Joe Biden saying he's not going to use the 14th Amendment because he's got a secret special plan. He wants to work with his good friends who tried to deny him the right to be president after he was elected so. He's going to work with them. It's a good kind of conversation to get better at. I think it'll help us if we acknowledge that we could have been wrong. A big part of the reason why I focus on the reasoning behind a decision. Why do I disagree with Biden's refusal to use the 14th Amendment? It's the reasoning behind it. I'm bordering on thinking that this guy really does have a competent plan in place. I mean, Biden's been in the game for such a long time. I believe he might have a competent plan in place. Okay, maybe it's not just total ignorance that is making him deign to work with Republicans at all. Maybe there is some plan. But the reasoning, I can't stand it. Why didn't I like Hillary Clinton? The reasoning behind her decisions for her whole career. Why don't I like Ken Paxton. In Texas, that's Ken Paxton arguing with the state house there. Why do I take the state house's side, even though that's a Republican-led group as well? The reasoning. What we should be instilling now in folks is good reasoning, but we should also acknowledge that there are people who have been perfectly reasonable who have fallen for cons. And we should be preparing now for conversations with different political parties. Let me know in the VOD in the comments. Let me know. Pick a group and let me know what you think is the correct way to address the revelations that we come across. Because I'll tell you, we've got plenty of opportunities right now with MAGA. How do you feel now that you know that Trump lied about E. Jean Carroll? How do you feel now that you know Trump lied about the documents? How do you feel now that you know, and you know, documents case hasn't even been tried out in court. Toss that aside. How do you feel now that you know that Fox was lying to you about the 2020 election? It's going to be good information for us to have. And getting used to talking to these people, coming out the other side, that's been the biggest weakness of the group that has been consistently right. We end up being right, and then people getting mad at us about it. We get called arrogant. Figure out, work as a group here. Figure out what we have to say to welcome people to the side of right and decency. Because we're going to be having those conversations a lot in the coming days. Let's see what the wicked community has to say. Ooh, Lord. Jesse Jennings. Global warming usually happens when the ice age is dwindling down. Look it up. Global warming is not a matter of debate. It's fact. You can deal with it, or you can not be part of the conversation. But it's man-made global warming is happening. How about this, Jesse? You tell me, and I'm taking over with Jesse here. You tell me what would be an acceptable source for global warming to you, or like information on global warming. You tell me, and we'll look at where you're, what kind of sources you're talking about. It could be generic. It can be a group of scientists. I'll find you a group of scientists. Anti-corporatists. Here's the thing. The Earth's atmosphere extends less than 100 miles from the Earth's surface, so it is finite, and we burn millions of barrels of oil a day. It's got to go somewhere. Exactly. I'll be looking this guy up, says Wireless Mike. Yeah, James O'Brien is fantastic. It's a radio talk show. It is not just his show, says Andrew Woznicki. True, it's LBC, right? Yeah. James O'Brien's YouTube or James O'Brien's appearances on that YouTube channel is what I'm fascinated by. Jesse Jennings says it was global cooling a year ago. No, it is not. And change, as Zix correctly points out, doesn't occur in a year or two. This is a great example, though, of the kind of debates we've been talking about this week. So notice what's happening with Jesse. You know what? You guys right now help me with something. Let's play. Let's do a little role playing, and I'd like you guys to ask me 2 specific questions. Go type them in the chat. Zix, I would very much like you to ask me a question where the answer could be very embarrassing. And Lulu Girl, I would like you to ask me whether or not I think a gentleman should be allowed to have a mustache. In fact, Zix asked me if I have tiny genitals. And Lulu Girl, at the same time, I'd like you to ask me whether or not I think people should be able to grow mustaches. Let's just see. Go ahead, type it out. Put it in the chat for me. We'll do a little performance art here. Lefty loonies. Yeah. Okay. So I get asked these two questions. Zix asks me, hey, do you have tiny little genitals? And Lulu Girl asks me, do you think men should be allowed to wear mustaches? Sure, I'll answer that question. Yeah, I think gentlemen should be allowed to wear mustaches. Next segment. Zix says, I don't go there, Jake, because it doesn't matter. You're right. It actually does not matter, and that's a stupid thing to judge people on. How about this? Whether or not I'm wearing pants right now. Pants at all. You asked me two questions at once. It's not that I'm going to answer based on whether or not my genitals are this or that, or whether or not I'm wearing pants. I'm going to answer the one I'm prepared to demonstrate. I'm willing to demonstrate about the mustaches. If multiple people are talking at once, it gives somebody the opportunity to only address the things they're prepared to demonstrate. It's that simple. So, it's a good lesson going forward. And you're right, a physical whatever, it just doesn't matter. But still take the greater point. That's why we do it Dragon Ball Z style, one opponent at a time. But all in all, look, everybody guns down for a second. If you're mid-debate, stop typing. Doesn't matter if you're right or wrong. The only way to be wrong is to continue the debate right now. Because I want to praise y'all. Jesse, I think you are misinformed. I think you have, in fact, been malinformed. It's true. And I'll present my information, but I'll tell you this. I know one thing for sure about you that I respect. This was a 2-hour-plus stream where a lefty ripped in to your point of view, to your political, generally speaking, point of view, and you sat through it. You took it. Rest of you out there, and you will feel better when you do this, even if you don't enjoy typing it. I would recommend you praise Jesse for that, because that's praiseworthy, for sure. Again, I think you're wildly misinformed by other folks. But if I truly believe that, it would be wrong of me to make you feel bad for sitting in a stream that deals with information that I think is probably good for you to hear. So I praise you for having the thick skin to sit through this. Well done. The rest of you, I'm talking anti-corporatists, I'm talking Zix, Wireless Mike, Lulu Girl. You guys, you're killing it. You really are. I'm seeing the arguments you're putting down. They're beautiful. I'm seeing the effort you're putting in to understanding these things, to assessing yourself, to assessing others, to trying to make the world better. You're killing it. You're the reason we're going to win. That and being right. My bias at the end there, I can't help it. I'm not that mature, y'all. Honestly, I'm delighted to have you here. Thank you so much. This has been WYCD Wicked on a salty Saturday. We shall be back next week with more of the politics of the United States and around the world, where we tell you what you can do. I'll see you next time.